Hello Reddit readers, today we have interesting facts on the timeline that you might not have known about. I will not detain you anymore. Like and subscribe to the channel of pleasant viewing. Story 1 from user Orange Enough. Your calf muscles act as a pump for your lymph fluid, which is basically the garbage pickup and immunity DoorDash of your body. Without flexing your calf, the fluid has no way of moving against gravity. Each time we walk, the muscles contract, squeezing the fluid back up towards the core for processing. That's why sitting for long periods causes swelling in the legs. Sitting for long periods, move your ankles up and down to pump the calf. Holy shit. This blew up. I'm overwhelmed by all the responses. Thank you for the awards. A few things to add. Source: I am a lymphedema specialist. Veins of the lower leg also heavily rely on the calf muscle pump, so blood pools along with lymph from prolonged immobility. Elevating your legs is helpful, using gravity to help move fluid. Also using compression socks to help push the fluid back up, especially if you stand still for long periods. Our lymph nodes are located at joint spaces such as knees, hips, armpits, etc., so that movement compresses them and moves the fluid throughout the body. Movement is key. The thoracic duct in your upper abdomen processes about 70 of lymph deep breathing, compresses the duct via the diaphragm, and helps to move lymph. People who lack mobility, think paraplegics or people bedbound from illness, are prone to lower leg swelling and often have complications such as blood clots, DVTs, skin breakdown wounds, etc. Because all the garbage is just sitting in one spot. Manually moving the legs helps, or using specifically designed pumps. TLDR: pump your calves. Take deep breaths and move your joints to improve everything. Story 2 from user PJ Murphy. There was an NWide article a few years ago. They got a massive data dump. Billions of items of location data pings from cell phones that had been collected and aggregated by apps on phones. It makes sense that you can't take a cell phone into CIA headquarters in Langley, right? You don't want people photographing documents or recording conversations. So the NYT said, show me the phones that are in the CIA parking lot regularly. They picked one at random, then said, show me where this phone is between midnight and 6 a.m. every night. Then they knew where the CIA employee lives. They looked up the public records of home ownership and got that person's name. If they wanted to, they probably could have got the social media accounts of the other residents like their kids, then ventured into the photos looking for pics of daddy or mommy. Facial recognition data. They also said, show me the phones that are in Washington, D.C., but occasionally pop up at Mar-a-Lago. But only when Trump is visiting there, they were able to identify a Secret Service agent. You might think that it's convenient to give your weather app permission to access your location data. That way, whatever town you're in, the weather info pops up by default. What you don't know is that you're giving them permission to harvest your location, pings every few seconds, and then sell them. That's how the free app makes profit. Advertisers can use that data to target you. If you spend time at a car dealership, you're going to see ads from the competition. If you spend time at Home Depot, you're going to see ads from Lowe's. One guy was brilliant. He was a personal injury lawyer, and he targeted his ads to people browsing their phones in the waiting room at the ER. Story 3 from user Unifyork. There's no difference between a dialect and a language. Not even intelligibility, though it can be useful to say so. Alternatively, languages are more accurately dialect continuums. We just arbitrarily chop up these continuums, according to political or geographical nomenclature, as languages zooming in. Further speech is comprised of bundles of features with perfectly matching bundles being rare between individuals. Idiolect: the speech of an individual. Also, you typically only use between 20-80 of the salient features associated with your dialect, and you almost certainly have multiple dialects feature bundle configurations, or multiple registers for use in different situations, and the ratio will be different in each. We prefer to learn language from our peers, not our parents, and there's very little they can do about it. We only have a brief window in which to learn language. People who fail to be primed with at least one language by a certain stage of brain development will never learn it fully. They will have problems acquiring syntax and derivational morphology. That is, language has a biological basis, but it needs input from our environment to take hold. This critical period depends on individual brain development, but usually begins to close near puberty. This is related to the ease with which children acquire second languages over fully developed adults, after which our second language learning has to be internalized, the same as any other area of study. No language is really harder to acquire than another in second language acquisition. Entry-level learning may be easier or harder, depending on the similarities shared between the learners, first language and target language, but still nothing that can't be covered with a few extra months. The real learning process begins only once the learner has internalized. All of that language is only spoken or signed, not written. Writing is an approximation of language. Even the International Phonetic Alphabet (IPA), a tool linguists use for documenting language, is a necessarily imperfect approximation that records values in a broad rather than precise sense. It's just a little less arbitrary than socio-culturally evolved writing systems. Linguists study grammar. They don't prescribe or proscribe it. You only have to watch your speech around primary school teachers tasked with instructing arbitrary convention for a practical purpose. Linguists want you to stub your foot and give us your very best profanity, and generally think as little as possible about what you're saying. Story 4 from user Octthird, professional comic artist here. I can think of a few though. Some of these are more from the perspective of a professional level artist compared to an amateur, rather than an artist compared to the general public. Your skill level does not matter when it comes to making money. You can be a millionaire and only draw stick figures, or be doing the most detailed paintings possible and not make a cent. It all comes down to how well you can advertise your product. There's always people out there willing to give you money for your art, but it's on you to find them. Art schools are a scam. 99% of the time, an art school is a complete waste of money and will leave you ill-prepared for an actual career in the industry. You're trying to enter. I've seen people who graduated art schools that cost them 6 figures, and they still didn't know basic fundamentals like perspective or lighting. Those are things a completely brand new artist should be learning in their first year of studies. The one where they can be useful is for studio networking, if you plan on working in a production studio of some sort. But even then, there's alternative and cheaper ways of doing it. Freelance artists make a ton of money. If you find your audience, you can easily make 6 figures a year, just posting art to social media and selling your own merch. Especially at conventions, I've seen countless people do it over the years. Your tools don't matter. I've seen professional comic illustrators who use tablets and computers that cost tens of thousands, and I've seen ones who use printer paper and pencils. From Walmart, tools are irrelevant. It's all about having the skills and using them. No, you can't learn anime style without learning realism first. This is one I get asked a lot. Anime is just exaggerated realism. So if you know realism, you can easily draw anime as you'll already have a mastery of proportions and anatomy. If you don't know realism, you'll have no idea why the anime artists you admire make the choices they do, and will rely on simply copying their examples with no way of deciphering their methods to ever really learn anything. Story 5 from user Ajanali. Health insurance in the US. If your provider says your insurance company denied coverage for a procedure, call the insurance company yourself. The insurer will give providers the runaround, but are often much more accommodating to the actual customer. Know the details of your plan. Yes, you may have been told X procedure is subject to coinsurance, so you're paying for 15% of the total procedure cost, but don't get mad if I give you a much higher estimate, because you didn't read the fine print stating the procedure is subject to your $8,000 deductible, unless you're young and have health stats that would make a marathon runner blush. Do not opt for a high deductible plan, just because the low copays are desirable. Eventually, you will get burned. Try to choose a plan with out-of-network coverage in an emergency. You don't get to decide which hospital you go to, and you don't want to be stuck with 100% of the cost for elective procedures in a hospital. Do not just look at your plan coverage for the hospital visit. For example, will you need anesthesia? Check your plan coverage for in and out of network. Anesthesiologists, just because the hospital is in network, doesn't mean the contracted anesthesiologist is. Your plan also has an out-of-pocket maximum that is the total amount you pay before insurance will cover 100% of the cost. Similar to a deductible, you also do not want this to be a high number. If you have a low deductible, you can still get burned by a high OOP. Maximum deductible is $250. Excellent, you frequently visit doctors and specialists due to a health condition and have an OOP. Maximum of 10,000 of. You're gonna have a bad time. Health insurance in the US is complicated, so I'm sure there's more to add. These are just the topics that seem to come up most often. Story 6 from user CS World Champ. All of the things that non-artists call talent are actually just hard work. Acting, singing, visual art, poetry, etc. are all learned skills. Is there a genetic component? Certainly. But that genetic component is about one as important as the hard work part. I liken it to the NBA helps if you're tall, and there's no denying that. But if you're picking teams and you have one guy who is tall and another guy who has practiced their three-pointer 2,000 times, who are you going to pick for your team? The shortest MVP in the NBA history was 54. The reason natural talent seems so important to people who aren't in the field is because when they had their theatrical experiences, high school, nobody had done the hard work. So you had a bunch of untrained people playing a pickup game of basketball, and the one of them who is tall seems like they completely dominate the field. Then most of the non-tall people think I have no natural ability like that, and give up on it. But the open secret is this: among trained, practiced, experienced, mature, professional artists, natural talent is a minuscule piece of the puzzle. It might separate the elite from the ultra-elite. It might make the difference between who wins the Oscar and who is merely nominated for the Oscar. But nobody would say that someone who was merely nominated for an Oscar was a bad actor. If that natural ability possessed by the best actor at your high school gave them an advantage, then that advantage was confidence. The belief that they could succeed, and that confidence would help them persevere in the face of the hardship that all artists face. But any single one of us has the ability to be an actor, or a painter, or a singer. Yes, anyone, yes, even you. If you're willing to put in the hard work and take the hard knocks and not quit when the going gets tough. It's not about talent, it's about tenacity. Success in the arts is about getting knocked down and getting back up again over and over and over and over. Most people don't like to admit that not being able to do something like act or sing or draw seems easier to stomach if it's some kind of divine talent lottery that just missed you, but it's practice, just practice. Story 7 from user SciGuy52. People place too much emphasis on genetics for how they developed and don't seem to get or refuse to believe the significant factors played by environment. It is true, some diseases are purely of genetic origin. Some physical traits are purely based on genetics, but not as many as you think. A lot of times your genes can provide you with a physical or mental potential, but to be realized requires important environmental effects. Say you have tall family members from generation to generation in a good, healthy environment. You may be quite likely to be tall too. Note the healthy environment here. This means you are fed well and get good nutrition. However, if you are in an environment like in an impoverished environment and do not get essential nutrients or even not enough food, while developing, you may well not end up taller than normal. Proper nutrition is needed to realize your height potential in most cases. And if you don't have that, your chances of being tall, compared to your parents, are much lower. Some will anyway, but many will not. All due to nutrition. In fact, the average height of Americans is taller than just 200 years ago. 200 years is not a sufficient time to change the population's genetic makeup to change heights on average. So what is the difference? 200 years ago, many Americans did not get enough food or proper nutrition to reach their potential and were on average shorter. This is an environmental effect. The average height of Americans increased as food abundance and proper nutrition was improved, and 200 years is too short for the genetic makeup to change. So to account for this, intelligence is like this too. You may have the genetic potential to be really smart, but this assumes you are not poor, perhaps starving in parts of your early life, and your intelligence generally will not reach your potential due to nature's influence, due to very poor nutrition. Other environment factors include upbringing in key younger years. You need adequate educational opportunities that are of adequate quality to realize your potential. Some will meet the potential even then, but many will not. Genes can give you the ability to have some traits, like height or greater intelligence, but the proper environment is necessary for this population to realize it. On average, in many cases, Genes just provide the potential, and the environment will determine the extent. It will be realized. Redditors who don't understand genes and how they work assume they are the factor that determine your traits as you grow. But it is not so, except with the purely genetic characteristics I alluded to above, and just don't get the environment's role in this process. It is the nature versus nurture we talk about. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and write comments. See you later.